Hi everyone, my name is Vadim, and I've been doing data analytics for the last 20 years. Recently, I've been thinking that, ooh, it's actually simpler than other people might think. Um, and I would like to reflect on that simplicity and share it with you. Now, if you're one of those people, my videos could be very, very interesting for you. And the biggest category of those people is, of course, people who use Excel. Sometimes Excel is not enough and you want something different, or it's too complex, or formulas are too complex, and there are other options. Or if you don't like coding, whether it's SQL, Python, R, whichever program language, there are other options. And those options are definitely more for people that are more visual and simplistic in the way how logic is laid out. Or if you need to do some data analysis or data preparation and you need to pick up some of those skills. If you use other people's help at work, for example, if you have data people that do stuff for you and you would like to try yourself, this might be for you. Or if you're already a data analyst and would like to improve your skills, then stick around and I will show you how simple it is. Okay, let's define what data actually is. Now, a dictionary defines it as facts or statistics collected together for reference or analysis. But what does it actually mean? I think it would be a lot simpler if we say that for the purposes of these videos, data is tables. And we all know tables are made up of rows and columns. And rows basically represent individual objects, and therefore they slightly higher in the level of hierarchy than columns because they are what your data is about. Like, for example, your orders, each row will represent a separate row, or your customers, where each row represents a separate customer, and so on and so forth. And what are the columns? They are qualities or attributes of those objects. Like, for example, people might have date of birth or weight or gender and so on and so forth. So therefore, we can see that by convention, that's how we agreed. We agreed that rows are your objects and columns are the attributes of those objects. Now, the only other possibly useful things about tables could be that rows could easily be separated and they will still retain their value because you can still have complete information about each objects in each of those two separate sets. Whereas if you separate some columns from the other columns, then you'll lose that connection, and those columns that lost that connectivity to your objects have become useless. Like, for example, weight or date of birth. If you don't know who it belongs to, therefore it's wasted. So that's basically everything about tables. Now, I understand there are other different formats and some very specific examples where tables are just not enough, or tables are two-dimensional, and sometimes in very niche cases you need to go to 3 or 4 dimensions and so on and so forth. But for the purposes of these videos, tables will cover everything we need. Now, because we're visual people, let's just have a look at a simple example what a table is. So you can see we've got 3 rows here in this made up table, which I don't really know what it is. I just wanted to make it really simple. It's got 3 rows with some dates and a couple of columns. First column is, let's say it's some kind of ID, ABC, and the second column is a date. So that's a simple table for you. And effectively, again, the story here, rows are your objects and the columns are your attributes, or the attributes of those objects. And that was table. And here comes the most interesting bit. There is only 5 things you need to know to do any data analysis. and I will show you what those 5 are in just a second. You might ask, but there are so many other things. There are so many formulas in Excel. There is pivot tables in Excel. There is SQL code. There is all kinds of things in multiple tools. And yes, you are right. There could be hundreds and hundreds of different tools out there, but over the last 20 years, as I do my job, and I actually found that there's only 5 that you really need to know. And they like fundamental building blocks of any data analytics. They can do anything you want. There are some better tools that potentially let you perform some shortcuts and do complex tasks quicker. But if you know just 5, you'll be just absolutely fine with any data analysis you need to do. Okay, number 1 is filter. Filter is just a way of separating some rows from your table based on a particular criteria. The append is just opposite when you're trying to combine those 2 separate sets of rows together. And that's of course given that they've got the same columns, because there's no point trying to connect together some rows that have nothing in common. Number 2 is computed column. As the name implies, this is when you add another column to your table, and that column typically uses some kind of calculation that takes other columns in your table into account. Number 3 is join. Join is probably the most powerful tool because it allows you to join or connect 2 separate tables together. Number 4 is aggregation. Aggregation is a way of reducing number of rows in your table. It could be things like calculating totals or subtotals, or reducing number of jumping from one level to another. For example, if you have individual orders, you can aggregate them by product, for example, that was ordered in each order. And that's an example of aggregation. And the last one is sort. Sort is probably easiest to explain because it's just rearranging the row order in your table. And it's not actually used very commonly, but it's a useful tool as well. Now, as you can see, there is only 5. And sometimes it's even useful when you get stuck and in whatever analytics piece you're trying to do. Sometimes it's just easy to go over those 5 and see, okay, what does this one do? What's my particular situation here? Do I need to separate some rows? Is that a filter? Do I need to make some kind of calculation? Is that a computed column? Do I have to deal with 2 tables or multiple tables? Then it's possibly a join. Do I need to rearrange the level of rows in the table? Then it's an aggregation potentially. Or do I need to rearrange the order of the rows in my table? Then it's a sort. That's how you use those 5. And over the next few videos, I will be showing you examples of how to use them in a particular software package that is free and graphical and easy to use. And hopefully you'll be able to join me in those videos. And if you like this one, please subscribe. Thank you and stay safe.